Screaming filled my ears as the heavy chandelier crashed into the Italian marble floor, shattering into a million pieces. That was my last memory, before everything went black, dying, buried under a mountain of debt and betrayal, framed for a $38,000 disaster my fiancé caused. Now, staring at the calendar flashing May 14th, my lungs pull in sharp, freezing air. Rebirth isn't just a second chance. Rebirth is a loaded gun, and this time, my finger rests firmly on the trigger. Gasping for air, my eyes snapped open. I was staring at a ceiling, but not the water-stained, rotting drywall of the cheap motel I had died in. This ceiling was impossibly high, adorned with pristine crown molding and an intricate modern chandelier. The air smelled of overpriced lavender and vanilla, Samantha's favorite diptyque candles. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I scrambled upright, my hands gripping the 1,000-thread count Egyptian cotton sheets. This was the Soho loft, the 3-bedroom, penthouse-level apartment that cost an eye-watering $9,000 a month. I grabbed my phone from the marble nightstand. The glaring digital numbers burned into my retinas. Saturday, May 14th, 2022, 8:15 a.m. I dropped the phone as if it had scorched my palm. It was impossible. I had just been dying. I remembered the blinding headlights of the delivery truck, the crushing impact, the sickening snap of my own ribs as I rode my beat-up bicycle through the freezing rain, desperately trying to complete a DoorDash delivery just to afford instant noodles. I remembered the cold asphalt of the Chicago streets, choking on my own regrets. But I wasn't dead. I was sitting in the very apartment where my life had effectively ended the first time around. May 14th, 2022. The date was seared into my brain like a branding iron. This was the day of Samantha's infamous Midsummer Madness party. Memories of my past life flooded my mind in a violent, suffocating wave. In that previous timeline, I had loved Samantha Miller with a blinding, pathetic devotion. She was an aspiring influencer, a woman whose beauty was matched only by her bottomless greed. I had financed her lifestyle, acting as the silent, invisible bank rolling her climb up the social ladder. When she demanded to host a massive party for her brand launch, I had hesitated. Our landlord, Arthur Pendleton, was a notoriously ruthless real estate magnate. He was old money, strict, and had explicitly forbidden large gatherings in the lease. But Samantha had cried, manipulated, and kissed my neck until I caved. I stayed in the apartment that night to help manage the crowd. What was supposed to be 50 people ballooned into 300 drunken, out-of-control strangers. They had treated the luxury loft like a frat house. I remembered the exact moment my life fell apart. Sometime past midnight, someone shoved a speaker into the massive, custom-built, 500-gallon saltwater aquarium I had installed in the living room. The glass shattered. Hundreds of gallons of corrosive saltwater, exotic fish, and jagged glass flooded the vintage Persian rugs and warped the imported hardwood floors. The water seeped into the subflooring, destroying the ceiling of the billionaire tech CEO who lived below us. When Arthur Pendleton's legal team descended upon us the next morning, the damages were calculated at exactly $38,450. But the real twist of the knife came from Samantha. When the police and the landlord arrived, she had stood in the wreckage, sobbing crocodile tears, and pointed her finger squarely at me. It was his party. She had lied to the authorities. I begged him to stop it, but he wouldn't listen because I was the guarantor on the lease and the primary breadwinner. The legal burden fell entirely on me. Pendleton froze my assets through relentless litigation. My pristine credit score evaporated. I drained every cent of my savings to keep myself out of jail, losing my corporate consulting job in the ensuing scandal. 2 weeks later, when I was officially bankrupt and living out of my car, I went to Samantha for help. I found her in the bed of Tyler Brooks, my supposed best friend. They had been sleeping together for a year. Tyler had even been the one who pushed the speaker into the aquarium, laughing as he did it. They looked at my ruined, penniless state and laughed. Samantha had tossed my remaining clothes out the window, calling me a broke loser. 3 months later, desperately working gig jobs in the dead of winter to pay off the remaining settlement, I was hit by that truck. I pressed my palms against my eyes, feeling the hot tears of rage and disbelief sliding down my cheeks. I was back. The universe, in some twisted, miraculous stroke of justice, had rewound the clock. I looked at the bathroom door, hearing the shower running. Samantha was in there, humming a pop song, getting ready for a day at the spa before her big night. In 10 hours, the caterers would arrive. In 12 hours, the first guests would show up. In 16 hours, the apartment would be destroyed. I slowly stood up, my bare feet sinking into the plush rug. The overwhelming, suffocating love I used to feel for the woman in the shower was completely gone, replaced by a glacier of cold, calculated fury. I was not going to be the sacrificial lamb this time. I was not going to stand by while she and Tyler ruined my life. I walked over to the full-length mirror. The man staring back at me looked identical to the Caleb from 4 years ago. Sharp jawline, dark hair, unscarred skin, but his eyes were ancient. They were the eyes of a dead man walking. "You want to throw a party, Samantha," I whispered to my reflection, a dark, dangerous smile pulling at the corners of my mouth. "Let's see how you handle the hangover." The shower shut off. A moment later, the bathroom door swung open, and Samantha walked out, wrapped in a fluffy white robe, a towel twisted around her wet, golden blonde hair. "Morning, babe," she chirped, not even looking at me as she walked straight to her vanity mirror. "Did you transfer the $5,000 to my account for the DJ? He needs the deposit by noon, or he's backing out. And honestly, if DJ Enzo doesn't spin tonight, my entire launch is ruined." Hearing her voice, that whiny, entitled tone I used to find endearing, made my stomach churn with disgust. I forced my hands to relax, shoving them deep into the pockets of my sweatpants so she wouldn't see my knuckles turning white. "I'm taking care of it right now," I lied smoothly. "Good," she said, applying a thick layer of expensive moisturizer that I had paid for. "I'm heading to Antoine's for my blowout and a hot stone massage. I'll be gone until around 3. Make sure the cleaning service finishes the windows before I get back. And Caleb," she finally turned to look at me, her blue eyes flashing with a manipulative softness. "Don't be a buzzkill tonight, okay? Tyler and the guys are coming, and I just want everyone to have a good time." Tyler. The name echoed in my skull like a gunshot. "I won't be a buzzkill," I promised, my voice eerily calm. "In fact, I guarantee you won't even notice I'm there." She smiled, satisfied, and turned back to her mirror. By 9:30 a.m., she was dressed in a designer tracksuit and walking out the front door, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume and a list of demands. The second the deadbolt clicked shut, I sprang into action. First things first, the legal trap. I sprinted to my home office and booted up my laptop. I logged into my emails, my fingers flying across the keyboard. In the previous timeline, the lease structure of this apartment had been the bullet that killed me. Because Samantha didn't have the income to qualify for the luxury loft, the lease was in her name as the primary tenant, but I was the sole financial guarantor. However, there was a massive loophole I had entirely forgotten about until this morning. Our original 12-month lease had expired yesterday, May 13th. The property management company had sent a DocuSign link 3 days ago for the renewal. In my past life, blindly in love, I had signed the guarantor renewal on the morning of the party, locking myself into another year of financial liability just hours before the disaster. I opened the email from Pendleton Management. The DocuSign link stared back at me, glowing blue, waiting for my electronic signature. With a dark chuckle, I clicked, "Decline to sign." A prompt popped up asking for a reason. I typed, "I am terminating my relationship with the primary tenant and am vacating the premises effective immediately. I will no longer act as financial guarantor for Samantha Miller under any circumstances." I hit send, but I didn't stop there. Arthur Pendleton was old school and ruthless, so I needed an ironclad paper trail. I drafted a direct email to his senior property manager, Brenda Collins, a woman who despised Samantha's noisy habits. "Dear Brenda, please let this serve as official written notice that I am vacating Unit 4B effective as of 10:00 a.m. today, May 14th. I have declined the lease renewal. As of this moment, I surrender all access rights and relinquish any financial responsibility for the unit or the actions of the remaining tenant, Samantha Miller. Any damages, fees, or rent moving forward are her sole legal responsibility." I have time-stamped photos of the apartment's pristine condition upon my departure. Thank you. I attached 30 photos. I rapidly snapped on my phone of the flawless marble floors, the intact aquarium, and the spotless walls. I hit send. The chains were officially severed. The guillotine was hanging directly over Samantha's neck, and she didn't even know it. Next was the extraction. I couldn't leave anything of value behind. If Samantha realized I was gone, she would pawn my belongings out of spite, or her drunk friends would destroy them. I grabbed 4 large, heavy-duty suitcases from the hall closet. I worked with the precision and speed of a military operative. I packed my entire collection of vintage watches, worth over $80,000, into my secure briefcase. I stripped my office of my high-end custom servers, my dual monitors, and my encrypted backup drives containing all my consulting work. I moved to the bedroom and packed only my clothes, leaving the closet half empty. I cleared out the small fireproof safe in the floorboards, pulling out my passport, social security card, and $20,000 in emergency cash. I looked around the apartment. The massive leather sectional sofa? I bought it, but it was too big to move. She could keep it. The red wine stains tonight would ruin it anyway. The 75-inch OLED TV, it was going to get a vodka bottle thrown through it by Tyler around 1 a.m. I'd leave it as a prop for the disaster. By 11:45 a.m., my life was condensed into 4 suitcases and 3 heavy duffel bags. I pulled out my phone and dialed a premium concierge moving service, willing to pay their exorbitant same-day fee. "Apex Relocation, this is David," a gruff voice answered. "David, I need an emergency extraction," I said sharply. 4 suitcases, 3 bags, and a few secure electronic items. I need them picked up from Soho and transported directly to the Waldorf Astoria in Midtown. Right now. We can have a Sprinter van there in 30 minutes. It'll cost you $800 for the rush. Make it 20 minutes and I'll give you 1,200, I countered. Done. While I waited, I went to the smart home control panel mounted on the wall. I had paid for and installed the state-of-the-art Nest security system, including discrete cameras overlooking the living room, the kitchen, and the front door. Samantha hated them, but I had insisted on them for security. I changed the master password to the network. I locked her out of the account completely. The cameras would stay active, recording directly to my private cloud storage. I was going to need front row tickets to the show. At 12:20 p.m., David from Apex Relocation arrived. He didn't ask questions. Together, we loaded my life into the back of his black Mercedes Sprinter van. I stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the fourth-floor windows of the loft. The sun was shining. The air felt lighter than it had in a lifetime. "To the Waldorf, sir?" David asked, opening the passenger door for me. "To the Waldorf," I confirmed, stepping inside. I didn't leave a dramatic note. I didn't send a breakup text. Ghosting Samantha on the day of her biggest vanity project was the ultimate psychological torture. Let her wonder. Let her panic. But most importantly, let her burn. The suite at the Waldorf Astoria was a sanctuary of silence and mahogany. I tipped David a crisp $100 bill for his speed, locked the heavy oak door of my room, and immediately poured myself a glass of 18-year-old Macallan from the minibar. I sat in the plush armchair by the window, overlooking the bustling Manhattan skyline, and opened my laptop. It was 2:30 p.m. I logged into the camera feeds. The loft was empty, quiet, and pristine. The massive saltwater aquarium bubbled peacefully in the background, a glowing blue jewel in the center of the living room. At 3:15 p.m., the front door swung open. Samantha strutted in, her hair styled into perfect, voluminous waves. She was on a FaceTime call, her voice echoing through the microphone of the entryway camera. "I know, Jessica. It's going to be insane." Samantha was laughing, kicking off her designer heels. "Caleb is being surprisingly chill about it. He even promised to pay the DJ. Oh, hold on. Let me see if my miserable boyfriend actually did what I told him to." I took a slow sip of my scotch, watching her walk into the kitchen. She checked her phone banking app. I watched her posture stiffen on the camera. She tapped the screen frantically. "Wait," she muttered to her friend. "He didn't transfer the money. That cheap bastard." She yelled my name. "Caleb! Caleb, where are you?" She marched toward the bedroom, disappearing from the camera's view for a moment. 30 seconds later, she reappeared, sprinting back into the living room, her face pale. "Jessica, I have to call you back," she snapped, hanging up the phone. She began frantically dialing her phone, pacing the floor. My own phone, sitting on the desk next to my laptop, vibrated. The caller ID flashed. Samantha. I watched it buzz until it went to voicemail. I didn't block her. I wanted a record of her descent into madness. She called 3 more times, her pacing becoming more erratic. She noticed the missing suitcases in the hall closet. I watched the exact moment her brain tried to process the fact that I had completely vanished. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed. It was the caterers. Samantha froze, looking at the door, then down at her phone. She was trapped. She couldn't cancel the party now. Her entire influencer reputation rested on this night. She buzzed them up. For the next 4 hours, I watched a masterclass in silent panic. The caterers set up the massive charcuterie boards, the champagne towers, and the open bar. DJ Enzo arrived, demanding his remaining $5,000 before he unpacked a single wire. I turned up the volume on my laptop, grinning as I listened to the exchange. I I can write you a check, Samantha stammered, sweating through her silk blouse. Cash or wire transfer, lady, the DJ grunted, crossing his arms. That was the deal. I watched as Samantha, trembling, was forced to wire the money from her own rapidly depleting savings account. I knew for a fact she only had about $6,000 to her name. She had just drained her entire safety net. At 8 p.m., the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows across the city. The first guests began to arrive. They were exactly as I remembered them. Loud, obnoxious, dripping in fast fashion luxury, carrying bottles of cheap tequila and looking to destroy something. At 9:15 p.m., the front door opened, and Tyler Brooks walked in. Seeing him on screen sent a jolt of pure, unadulterated venom through my veins. Tyler was tall, arrogant, with a slicked-back haircut and a smug smile that made me want to reach through the monitor and snap his neck. He had been my fraternity brother, my groomsman, my closest confidant, and he had betrayed me without a second thought. Samantha abandoned the group of girls she was talking to and rushed to him. They met in the hallway, supposedly out of sight from the main living room. What they didn't realize was that I had installed a secondary hidden micro camera in the entryway ceiling for package monitoring. I hit the record button on my screen recording software. "Where is he?" Tyler whispered, wrapping his hands possessively around Samantha's waist. "I don't know," Samantha hissed, burying her face in his chest. "He completely ghosted. His clothes are gone. His watch case is gone. He didn't even pay the DJ. I had to use my own money, Ty." Tyler scoffed, leaning down to kiss her deeply. I watched my fiancé and my best friend make out on my laptop screen, feeling absolutely nothing but icy triumph. "Good riddance," Tyler smirked, pulling away. "The guy's a pathetic loser anyway. Let him run away. You don't need him. Tonight is about you, baby." "But what about the rent? What about the bills?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "We'll figure it out," Tyler lied, smoothly, already looking over her shoulder toward the bar. "Just relax. Go take a shot. Let's rage." He walked past her, heading straight for the alcohol. Samantha stood in the hallway for a moment, her face twisting with a mix of anxiety and irritation, before pasting on a fake smile and rejoining the party. By 10:30 p.m., the party had crossed the threshold from a launch event into a chaotic riot. The 50 invited guests had invited their friends, who had invited their friends. The loft was packed wall to wall with sweating, screaming bodies. The bass from the DJ's speakers was so loud it distorted the audio on the camera feeds. I leaned back in my chair at the Waldorf, ordering a medium-rare filet mignon from room service, perfectly content. At 11:15 p.m., the first domino fell. A girl in towering stilettos stumbled backward on the marble floor, crashing directly into a pedestal holding an antique Ming vase replica I had bought at an auction. It hit the ground, exploding into porcelain shrapnel. Samantha shrieked, rushing over, but the crowd was too dense. People were already grinding the sharp pieces of porcelain into the expensive, custom-stained hardwood floors, leaving deep, irreparable gouges. Damage count, $2,500. I tallied it up in my head, taking a bite of my steak. By midnight, the air in the apartment looked hazy with smoke. People were blatantly smoking weed and vaping indoors, directly violating Arthur Pendleton's strict clean air clauses. Then, the doorbell rang again. The camera showed 2 massive, intimidating men in cheap suits standing in the hallway. They weren't guests. They were noise complaint enforcers, hired by the billionaire downstairs. I watched as Tyler, belligerently drunk and trying to show off for Samantha, answered the door. He didn't apologize. Instead, he shoved one of the men and slammed the heavy oak door in their faces. I couldn't help but laugh out loud in my hotel room. Oh, Tyler, you arrogant fool. In my previous life, I had spent 30 minutes apologizing to those men, offering them cash, begging them not to call the landlord or the police. By slamming the door, Tyler had just guaranteed that Pendleton management would be notified immediately. My phone vibrated on the desk. An email notification popped up. It was from Brenda Collins, the property manager. Caleb, we are receiving severe noise complaints and reports of physical altercation from Unit 4B. The downstairs tenant is threatening to call the police. I am reminding you that you are legally responsible for any violations. She had sent it before reading my morning email. I simply replied, "Hi, Brenda. Please refer to my email sent at 9:15 a.m. today, complete with my DocuSign refusal and photographic evidence of my move-out. I no longer reside there and hold no guarantor status. Please direct all complaints, police matters, and financial penalties to the sole leaseholder, Samantha Miller." 30 seconds later, Brenda replied, "Understood, Mr. Henderson. The police have been dispatched." I smiled, staring at the camera feed as Tyler drunkenly climbed onto the massive white leather sofa with his muddy sneakers, holding a bottle of cheap champagne. He was swaying dangerously close to the glowing 500-gallon saltwater aquarium. The climax of the tragedy was approaching, but this time I wasn't on the stage. I was in the director's chair, and I was going to make sure they burned the theater down to the ground. The digital clock on my laptop screen flipped to 12:45 a.m. The noise level in the loft had reached a fever pitch, a chaotic symphony of thumping bass, shrieking laughter, and the undeniable sound of glass breaking. I took another slow sip of my Macallan, my eyes locked on the camera feed of the living room. Tyler was standing on the backrest of my custom Italian leather sofa, sweating profusely, his tie loose and his eyes glazed with a dangerous mix of tequila and adrenaline. He was holding a heavy, rented PA speaker above his head, roaring something to the crowd that was drowned out by the music. Beside the sofa stood the centerpiece of the loft, the 500-gallon saltwater aquarium. Beside the sofa stood the centerpiece of the loft, the 500-gallon saltwater aquarium. It was a masterpiece of acrylic and glass, housing thousands of dollars worth of vibrant coral and exotic fish. In my past life, I hadn't seen exactly how it happened. I had been in the kitchen, frantically trying to clean up spilled vodka, when the crash echoed through the apartment. This time, I had a high-definition front-row seat. "Do it! Do it!" the crowd chanted, their faces distorted with drunken glee. Tyler, clearly trying to mimic a rock star at a concert, attempted to heave the speaker over the crowd to a table across the room. But his designer sneakers slipped on the leather upholstery, coated in spilled champagne. He pitched backward. The massive PA speaker slipped from his sweaty grip. Time seemed to slow down on the monitor. The heavy black box plummeted directly toward the glowing blue tank. Crash. Even through the compressed audio of the security camera, the sound of the reinforced glass shattering was deafening. It was a bomb going off in the middle of the living room. 500 gallons of corrosive, pressurized salt water exploded outward in a violent tidal wave. The force of the water swept several guests off their feet, sending them crashing onto the marble floors. Thick, jagged shards of glass, the size of dinner plates, rained down, slicing into the hardwood. The water instantly flooded the Persian rugs, pooling into a miniature lake that rushed toward the baseboards. Exotic fish, lionfish, tangs, and angelfish flopped desperately on the ruined floors amid the screaming crowd. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the water short-circuited the DJ's heavy equipment. The music died instantly, replaced by a chorus of panicked shrieks, the sickening sound of rushing water, and the popping of blown electrical sockets. Then came the red and blue flashing lights, reflecting off the high windows. The front door didn't just open, it was kicked off its hinges. 6 NYPD officers, accompanied by the 2 noise complaint enforcers from earlier, swarmed into the entryway, their heavy boots splashing into 2 inches of murky salt water. NYPD, kill the power. Everyone stay where you are, a sergeant bellowed over the pandemonium. Through the chaos, I spotted Samantha. She was backed against the kitchen island, her designer dress soaked to the waist, mascara running down her face in thick, ugly, black streams. She looked around frantically, her eyes darting through the crowd of drenched, fleeing guests. "Caleb," she screamed, her voice cracking with pure terror. "Caleb, where are you?" I leaned closer to the screen, my heart beating with a steady, icy rhythm. "I'm right here, Sam, watching you drown." The police began aggressively clearing the apartment, shoving crying influencers and arrogant frat boys into the hallway. Tyler was sitting on the floor, bleeding from a small cut on his forehead, looking completely bewildered as an officer hauled him to his feet by the scruff of his expensive shirt. "Who is the homeowner?" the sergeant demanded, his voice booming over the crying guests. "Who is responsible for this unit?" Samantha practically threw herself forward, pointing frantically at the empty space where I usually stood. "It's my fiancé, Caleb Henderson. He's the guarantor. It's his apartment. He threw the party. She stopped, realizing the room was empty. "He's not here, ma'am," the officer said, his tone dripping with disgust as he surveyed the apocalyptic damage. The water was already seeping rapidly into the subflooring, preparing to rain down on the billionaire's multi-million-dollar art collection directly below. "Let's see some ID, right now." I closed the laptop gently. The main event was over. Now, it was time for the autopsy. I stripped off my clothes, climbed into the pristine, dry, king-sized bed at the Waldorf Astoria, and slept better than I had in 4 years. I woke up at 9 a.m. on Sunday, feeling rested and utterly victorious. I ordered a pot of black coffee and a plate of Eggs Benedict, setting up my laptop on the mahogany room service table. I logged back into the camera system. The loft was a war zone. The power in the living room had been cut to prevent electrical fires, leaving the massive space bathed in dull gray morning light. The warped hardwood floors were buckling, curling upward like dead leaves. The smell of rotting sea life and stagnant salt water was practically radiating through the screen. Samantha was sitting on a kitchen stool, wearing the same ruined dress from the night before, her head buried in her hands. Tyler was asleep on the surviving piece of the leather sectional, snoring loudly. At exactly 9:45 a.m., the heavy footsteps of impending doom echoed in the hallway. The door, still severely damaged from the police raid, was pushed open. In walked Brenda Collins, clutching a thick manila folder, looking like a judge ready to hand down a death sentence. Behind her stood 2 men, a structural damage assessor and Arthur Pendleton himself, leaning heavily on a silver-handled cane. Arthur was a man who commanded absolute terror. He wore a perfectly tailored three-piece suit and looked at the ruined apartment as if he had just stepped in something foul. Samantha jumped up, her face pale and drawn. "Mr. Pendleton, Brenda, I am so sorry. My fiancé, Caleb, he went crazy. He threw this party, and then he just bolted. You have to find him. He's the guarantor. He has the money to fix this." Brenda opened her folder, her expression devoid of a single ounce of pity. "Mr. Henderson is not your fiancé anymore, Miss Miller, and he certainly isn't your guarantor," Brenda said coldly. Samantha blinked, her brain struggling to process the words through her hangover. What? What are you talking about? He signed the lease renewal. He explicitly declined the lease renewal via DocuSign yesterday morning at 9:15 a.m., Brenda stated, pulling out a printed copy of my email. He also provided written notice of his immediate departure, along with 30 time-stamped photographs proving the apartment was in flawless condition when he relinquished his keys. Because you remained in the unit without a guarantor, you automatically defaulted to a month-to-month primary tenant. Samantha staggered backward as if she had been physically struck. No, that's impossible. He wouldn't do that. He loves me. I don't care about your love life, young woman. Arthur Pendleton rasped, his voice like grinding stones. I care about my property. The tenant below you just had a $200,000 Rothko painting ruined by your salt water leaking through his ceiling. My legal team is handling his art insurance. But as for the structural damage to my building, the assessor handed Arthur a clipboard. Arthur didn't even look at it. He knew the numbers. The subflooring is destroyed. The electrical wiring is compromised. The hazardous material cleanup for the rotting fish and salt water will require a specialized crew. Arthur listed off, tapping his cane on the ruined floor with every point. The total immediate damage is calculated at exactly $38,450. $38,000! Samantha gasped, her knees giving out. She slumped against the kitchen counter, sliding down to the floor. I don't have that. I have $1,000 in my checking account. Then I suggest you find the rest by Tuesday, Arthur said ruthlessly, because if a cashier's check for $38,450 is not on my desk by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, I am filing criminal negligence and destruction of property charges against you. You will be arrested, Miss Miller. Good day. Arthur turned on his heel and walked out. Brenda dropped the official damage invoice onto the kitchen island before following him, leaving the door wide open. The commotion finally woke Tyler. He groaned, rubbing his face as he sat up, looking at Samantha, sobbing hysterically on the floor. Babe, what's going on? He mumbled, his voice thick with sleep and last night's alcohol. Why are the doors open? Tyler! Samantha practically crawled toward him, grabbing his pant legs. They want $38,000. Caleb set me up. He took his name off the lease and left me with the bill. If I don't pay it by Tuesday, I'm going to jail. Tyler's face drained of color. His eyes darted around the ruined apartment, landing on the shattered remains of the aquarium. The aquarium he broke. 38 grand? He whispered. You have to help me. Ty, she begged, tears streaming down her face, destroying the last remnants of her makeup. You work in finance. You have credit cards. You broke the tank, Tyler. The cops saw you covered in water. I leaned closer to my laptop, a cruel smile spreading across my face. Let's see how much he loves you now, Sam. Tyler stood up rapidly, prying her hands off his legs. Whoa, hold on a second, Tyler said, taking a massive step back toward the door. My name isn't on this lease, Sam. I was just a guest. You broke the tank, she screamed, her voice shrill with panic. You can't prove that, Tyler lied through his teeth, his eyes shifting nervously. People were pushing me. And honestly, it was your party. You invited everyone. This is your mess. Tyler, you said you loved me. I said we were having fun, he shot back, grabbing his suit jacket from the floor. I can't be tied to a felony property damage charge, Sam. I'd lose my broker's license. You need to figure this out with Caleb. Leave me out of it. He didn't even look back as he jogged out the door, abandoning her in the wreckage. Samantha sat alone in the ruins of her vanity, wailing into the empty apartment. I took a bite of my Eggs Benedict. It tasted like absolute perfection. By Monday afternoon, Samantha had reached the desperation phase. My phone had over 50 missed calls and hundreds of text messages ranging from furious, abusive threats to pathetic, sobbing apologies. Caleb, please, I'm scared. Please answer. You ruined my life, you psycho. I'm going to sue you. I'll do anything. Just please pay the landlord. I ignored all of them. Instead, I monitored the digital battlefield. Samantha, stripped of her safety net and facing criminal charges, resorted to the only weapon she thought she had left: her social media following. She had about 40,000 followers on Instagram, a modest audience built entirely on a fake lifestyle funded by my paycheck. At 2:00 p.m., she went live. I cast my phone screen to the Waldorf's massive flat-screen TV to watch the performance in high definition. She was sitting in her friend Jessica's apartment, wearing a modest, oversized sweater. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she wore just enough makeup to look exhausted and tragic. "Hey guys," she started, her voice trembling perfectly. "I didn't want to make this video, but I don't know what else to do. I'm in a really dark place right now." She paused, wiping away a single, highly practiced tear. "A lot of you know about my launch party this weekend, but what you don't know is the hell I've been living in behind closed doors. My fiancé, Caleb, he's been financially and emotionally controlling me for years. He organized this massive party, invited all these reckless people, and then, right before it started, he abandoned me. He deliberately took his name off our lease, left the apartment, and let his friends destroy my home." I scoffed, shaking my head. The audacity was almost impressive. "Now," she continued, looking directly into the camera with big, pleading eyes, "the landlord is coming after me for $38,000 in damages that Caleb caused. I'm facing jail time for a crime my abusive ex set me up for. I've set up a GoFundMe. Anything you can donate will help me fight this injustice and stay out of prison." The comments flooded in, hundreds of people sending heart emojis, calling me a monster, promising to donate. Within an hour, her GoFundMe had raised $3,000. She was spinning a web of lies to save herself. But she forgot one crucial detail. I had the security footage. It was time to detonate the bomb. I opened a secure, encrypted browser and created an anonymous email account. I compiled a tidy, undeniable digital dossier. File 1. The PDF of my email to Brenda Collins at 9:15 a.m., proving my legal departure hours before the party, alongside the 30 photos of the pristine apartment. File 2. The hallway security camera footage, time-stamped at 9:15 p.m., showing Samantha aggressively making out with Tyler Brooks. File 3. The high-definition living room footage, clearly showing Tyler drunkenly standing on the sofa and dropping the massive speaker into the aquarium, causing the $38,000 flood. I sent the dossier to 3 highly specific targets. First, I sent it to GoFundMe's Trust and Safety Team with the subject line, Urgent, Fraudulent Campaign, Criminal Investigation. I provided the police report number from the noise enforcers and the video proving she was lying about the cause of the damage to solicit funds. Second, I sent the entire folder to 2 major YouTube drama T channels that regularly covered influencer scandals. I knew they would jump at the high-quality security footage of a luxury launch party ending in a catastrophic flood. Finally, I targeted Tyler. He worked as a junior associate at a prestigious wealth management firm on Wall Street. They had a strict morality clause and 0 tolerance for public scandals. I found the email addresses of the firm's managing partner and HR director and sent them the video of Tyler destroying the tank and subsequently shoving an NYPD-affiliated noise enforcer. I closed the laptop and went out for a walk in Central Park. The air was crisp, the sun was bright, and the world felt entirely new. By Tuesday morning, the internet had done its job. I woke up to my phone, buzzing relentlessly with news alerts. The largest drama channel had dropped a 20-minute video titled, Influencer Scam, Samantha Miller's Fake Tears and $38,000 Lie. They had played the security footage in its entirety. The internet is a vicious, unpredictable beast, and Samantha had just fed herself to it. I watched the video. The commentary was brutal. They showed the clip of her kissing Tyler, proving her abusive fiancé narrative was a cover for her own cheating. Then, they played the clip of Tyler breaking the tank. Her Instagram comments were a bloodbath. You lied about domestic abuse to scam people. We literally watched your side piece break the tank. Enjoy jail, scammer. I checked the GoFundMe link. A banner at the top read, This fundraiser has been suspended due to violations of our terms of service. All donations have been refunded. She had lost the money. She had lost her reputation. At 10:30 a.m., my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I had a feeling I knew who it was. I answered it. You son of a bitch. Tyler's voice snarled through the speaker. He sounded unhinged, breathing heavily. You ruined my life. Tyler, I said, my voice smooth and calm. How's work? They fired me, he screamed. HR pulled me into a meeting at 9 a.m. They saw the video, Caleb. They saw me push the noise enforcer. They stripped my broker's license sponsorship. I'm blacklisted from every major firm in the city. That sounds like a personal problem, I replied coldly. You shouldn't drop speakers into fish tanks, Ty. It's bad for the environment. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to find you, and if you ever contact me again, or if you come within 100 feet of me, I will forward the uncut video to the NYPD precinct. I interrupted, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Right now, Samantha is taking the fall for the property damage. But if I give the police the video of you committing felony destruction of property, Arthur Pendleton's lawyers will hunt you for sport. Do we understand each other? Silence on the other end of the line. The heavy, suffocating silence of a man who realizes he has a gun pointed directly at his head. Yeah, Tyler choked out softly. Good, I said, and hung up the phone. I blocked his number. Tyler was neutralized. His career was over, his reputation in the finance world shattered. He was back to zero. But as satisfying as that was, the deadline was approaching. It was Tuesday, 4 p.m. Samantha had exactly 1 hour to produce $38,450. Or Arthur Pendleton was going to make good on his promise. And knowing Pendleton, The police were probably already waiting in the lobby of his office. The clock on my laptop screen read 4 p.m. 60 minutes until the guillotine dropped. From the comfort of my suite at the Waldorf, I watched the digital tracker of Samantha's life implode. Her social media accounts, once curated shrines to vanity and excess, had gone completely dark, forced into private mode to stem the relentless flood of internet vitriol. At 4:15 p.m., my burner phone buzzed. It was an email from Brenda Collins. Over the past 48 hours, an unspoken alliance had formed between us. She appreciated my swift, clean legal exit and flawless documentation, which made Pendleton Management's insurance claims significantly easier. "Caleb," Brenda wrote, "she is currently in the lobby of our corporate office. She is causing a massive scene. Mr. Pendleton has called the authorities. I thought you might want to hear this. Dial my office extension. I'll leave the receiver off the hook." A cruel, genuine smile stretched across my face. I immediately dialed the number Brenda provided. The line clicked open, and the ambient noise of a high-end corporate lobby filled my ear, followed by the shrill, hysterical sobbing of my former fiancé. "Please, you have to let me speak to Mr. Pendleton," Samantha wailed. Her voice was raw, stripped of its usual manipulative sweetness. "I have $5,000. I pawned my bags. I sold my jewelry. It's a down payment. I can get a job. I can pay it off. Miss Miller, I have told you 3 times to step away from the reception desk." Brenda's voice echoed through the phone, clipped and utterly devoid of sympathy. "Mr. Pendleton does not accept payment plans for felony-level property destruction. You were given a deadline of 5 p.m. to produce a cashier's check for the full amount. I don't have it. Caleb stole my life. Tyler broke the tank. Why are you doing this to me? We are doing this to you because you are the sole name on the month-to-month lease, making you legally liable for the guests you invited into the building." Brenda replied smoothly. "And frankly, after watching the internet video of you scamming thousands of people under false pretenses, Mr. Pendleton has zero interest in showing you leniency." "I'll sue you. I'll sue Caleb," she shrieked, the panic giving way to a futile, animalistic rage. "You are welcome to try, Miss Miller, but you might want to secure criminal defense counsel first." In the background of the audio feed, I heard the distinct, heavy squeak of the lobby's glass revolving doors. "NYPD," a deep, authoritative voice cut through Samantha's sobbing. "We got a call about a disturbance and an outstanding warrant for destruction of property. Are you Samantha Miller?" No, please," Samantha gasped, the sound of her backing away from the officers audible through the phone. "I'm the victim. I'm the victim here. You need to arrest Caleb Henderson." "Ma'am, put your hands behind your back. Don't touch me. Do you know who I am?" The scuffle was brief. The sharp, metallic ratcheting of handcuffs echoing through the receiver was the sweetest music I had ever heard. "Samantha Miller, you are under arrest for felony criminal mischief, destruction of property, and noise ordinance violations. You have the right to remain silent." I listened as the Miranda rights were read to the woman who, in another lifetime, had left me bankrupt, homeless, and bleeding to death on a freezing Chicago street. As her wails faded into the distance and the revolving doors spun shut, Brenda picked up the receiver. "She's gone," Brenda said quietly. "Thank you, Brenda," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the absolute euphoria coursing through my veins. "I appreciate you keeping me in the loop. Have a good life, Mr. Henderson. I highly doubt we'll be hearing from you again." "You certainly won't," I said. I hung up the phone. It was exactly 5:00 p.m. on Tuesday. The debt of my past life had been paid in full, but the universe wasn't done balancing the scales just yet. The fallout over the next month was a masterclass in mutually assured destruction. Without a guarantor, a job, or any remaining friends willing to associate with a viral scammer, Samantha spent 3 nights in a holding cell at Rikers Island before her estranged parents finally scraped together enough money to post her bail. But her release wasn't salvation. It was merely a transition from a literal prison to a financial one. Arthur Pendleton's legal team, a group of notoriously aggressive corporate sharks, filed a devastating civil lawsuit against her for $38,450 in damages, plus an additional $15,000 in legal fees, and lost rent while the loft was gutted and repaired. Backed into a corner and facing absolute ruin, Samantha did exactly what a cornered rat does. She turned on the only other person in the room. She officially filed a police report against Tyler Brooks. She provided the NYPD with the viral YouTube video, the very one I had leaked, showing Tyler drunkenly hoisting the heavy speaker and dropping it into the aquarium. Because the damages exceeded $250, Tyler was abruptly arrested at his cheap, temporary motel on a Wednesday morning, charged with felony criminal mischief. The ensuing court battle became a local tabloid spectacle. I didn't attend the hearings in person. I was far too busy building my new life. But I paid a paralegal a few $100s to send me the transcripts of the public proceedings. Reading them was like reading a brilliant, dark comedy. In the courtroom, Samantha and Tyler, the two people who had gleefully betrayed me, tore each other to shreds. Tyler's defense attorney argued that Samantha, as the party host, had aggressively overserved Tyler alcohol and encouraged the reckless behavior for her influencer content. Samantha's public defender argued that Tyler was a malicious, out-of-control guest who destroyed her home unprovoked. Tyler, furious over losing his lucrative Wall Street career, lost his temper on the stand. He screamed at Samantha, calling her a gold digger and admitting, on the legal record, that she had been cheating on her fiancé with him for a year just to maintain her free rent. The judge, a no-nonsense magistrate named Judge Gallagher, was thoroughly disgusted by both of them. The final ruling was a masterpiece of judicial karma. Because Tyler was the physical catalyst of the destruction, he was convicted of the criminal mischief charge. He was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and ordered to pay $20,000 in direct restitution to Arthur Pendleton. But Samantha didn't escape. As the legal tenant who facilitated the illegal gathering and violated the lease, Judge Gallagher held her jointly liable. She was saddled with the remaining $18,450 of Pendleton's bill, plus the totality of the $15,000 in legal fees. Furthermore, the New York Attorney General's office, alerted by the viral drama, opened an inquiry into her fraudulent GoFundMe campaign. While she avoided jail time for wire fraud by the skin of her teeth, she was hit with a permanent ban from all major crowdfunding platforms and a massive fine that decimated whatever meager savings she had left. Tyler Brooks, a convicted felon, blacklisted from the finance industry, buried in debt, and forced to pick up trash on the side of the BQE highway in a neon orange vest. Samantha Miller, a viral pariah, evicted, utterly broke, and saddled with a $33,000 judgment she had no possible way to pay. As for me, the chains of the past were completely shattered. I took the $20,000 in cash I had saved from the floorboards, liquidated my vintage watch collection for a clean $85,000, and moved across the country. I settled in Austin, Texas, a city booming with tech money and opportunity. Without the dead weight of Samantha draining my bank account and Tyler sabotaging my career, I was entirely free. I used my capital to launch a boutique cybersecurity consulting firm. Knowing the future trends of the industry from my past life, I secured 3 massive corporate contracts within my first 6 months. By the time the snow began to fall in New York, I was sitting on a rapidly growing net worth, living in a minimalist, sun-drenched condo overlooking the Colorado River, completely untouchable. 2 years passed. The memories of the Soho loft, the shattered aquarium, and the treacherous couple faded into the background of my mind, replaced by the relentless, exhilarating pace of my new success. My firm, Sentinel Cybernetics, had exploded in growth. What started as a boutique operation in Austin had expanded to a roster of 45 elite employees, securing multi-million-dollar contracts with defense contractors and international banks. I was traveling frequently, closing deals across the country. I was a man entirely reborn, living a life of absolute autonomy and immense wealth, a life I had only ever dreamed of in the cold, starving days of my previous timeline. In late November, a major cybersecurity summit brought me back to the East Coast. I flew into JFK on a first-class ticket, a far cry from the maxed-out credit cards I used to survive on. After delivering a successful keynote presentation at the Javits Center in Manhattan, I spent the afternoon fielding lucrative buyout offers from Silicon Valley executives. By the time I left the convention hall, dusk had settled over the city. My VP of Operations, Harrison Wright, had offered to grab dinner, but I declined. I wanted to walk. A freezing rain began to fall, slicking the pavement and reflecting the harsh neon lights of the storefronts. The icy droplets hitting my face triggered a visceral, fleeting memory. The blinding headlights of a delivery truck, the crunch of my bicycle frame, the agonizing cold of the asphalt. It was the exact same type of freezing rain that had claimed my life the first time around. But as I pulled the collar of my bespoke Italian cashmere coat tighter around my neck, I realized the cold couldn't touch me anymore. Seeking brief shelter and a warm cup of coffee while I waited for my company-contracted town car, I ducked into a small, unremarkable diner off Lexington Avenue. The bell above the heavy glass door chimed, cutting through the heavy scent of stale grease, burnt filter coffee, and cheap industrial floor cleaner. The place was mostly empty, save for a few tired locals escaping the miserable weather, hunched over plates of cold fries. I took a seat in a faded red vinyl booth near the back, pulling out my phone to review a term sheet for a new software acquisition. "I'll be right with you," a dull, exhausted voice muttered from the other end of the counter, accompanied by the clatter of dirty ceramic mugs. I didn't look up immediately, my thumb scrolling through the financial projections on my screen. A moment later, a waitress approached my table. Her heavy, orthopedic shoes squeaked slightly against the linoleum. She slapped a sticky, laminated menu down onto the table. "Coffee's fresh, but the kitchen closes in 10 minutes. No substitutions on the grill items," she recited mechanically, her tone completely devoid of life or energy. I locked my phone and finally looked up. My breath caught slightly in my throat, not out of fear, not out of lingering heartbreak, but out of sheer, profound shock at the universe's twisted sense of poetry. Standing in front of me, wearing a stained brown apron over a cheap, ill-fitting beige uniform, was Samantha Miller. For a long, suffocating moment, neither of us spoke. The diner's flickering fluorescent lights cast harsh, unflattering shadows across her face. The golden, voluminous hair I used to pay hundreds of dollars a month to maintain was chopped into a harsh, uneven bob, tied back with a frayed elastic. Her skin, once glowing with expensive skincare routines I had funded, was sallow and broken out from stress. But it was her eyes that told the real story. The radiant, manipulative spark, the arrogance that made her point a finger at me in a ruined apartment and lie to the police, was entirely extinguished. She looked 10 years older, her posture permanently hunched under the invisible, crushing weight of Arthur Pendleton's unyielding legal judgments. I watched the exact moment recognition hit her. Her eyes widened to the size of saucers. All the blood rushed out of her face, leaving her ghost pale, before flooding back in a violent flush of deep, agonizing shame. Her hand, clutching a cheap plastic pen and a green order pad, began to tremble so violently she dropped the pen. It clattered loudly onto the table. "Caleb," she whispered. The name slipped from her lips like a prayer she had no right to make. I simply looked at her, leaning back into the vinyl booth. I waited for the anger to rise. I waited for the burning vengeance that had fueled my escape 2 years ago. I waited for even a microscopic drop of pity. I felt absolutely nothing. She was just a stranger, a pathetic relic of a life that no longer belonged to me. "Caleb, oh my God," she stammered, her voice cracking as her eyes frantically darted over me. She took in the tailored cashmere coat, the pristine silk tie, the $200 haircut, and the subtle, unmistakable gleam of the platinum Patek Philippe watch resting on my wrist. A watch I had bought to celebrate my first $10 million in revenue. "Hello, Samantha," I said, my voice incredibly calm, polite, and completely detached. Tears instantly welled in her eyes, spilling over onto her sallow cheeks. You look incredible. I didn't know you were in New York. I heard you moved to Texas. I'm here on business," I replied smoothly. She swallowed hard, her trembling hands gripping the edge of the table, as if trying to anchor herself to a reality slipping away from her. "Caleb, please, you have to let me talk to you. Just for 5 minutes. I've thought about you every single day. Tyler ruined me. He lied to me. He manipulated me into everything. I'm drowning, Caleb. They garnish 60% of my wages for the lawsuit. I can barely afford a room in Queens." She was desperate, trying to play the same victim card that had worked on me in my past life. It was the look of a drowning woman seeing a luxury yacht sail by, begging for a life preserver. I held up a single hand, stopping her dead in her tracks. "I'm not interested in Tyler, Samantha, and I'm certainly not interested in the consequences of your own actions," I said, my tone dipping into a freezing, professional cadence. "I actually just received a text from my driver. I'm running late, so I've changed my mind on the coffee." "Caleb, wait, please," she sobbed, taking a step forward. I stood up, towering over her. The sheer authority in my posture made her shrink back instinctively. I reached into my coat pocket and slid out a heavy, platinum money clip. I extracted a crisp, unwrinkled $100 bill. I placed it gently on the table, right on top of the sticky laminated menu. It wasn't an act of kindness. It wasn't financial aid. It was a visual representation of the insurmountable gap between us, a gap she could never, ever cross again. It was a reminder that to me, $100 was absolute pocket change, while to her, It was a lifeline she had entirely forfeited. "Have a good evening, Samantha. Keep the change," I said. I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't look back. The bell chimed a final time as I stepped out into the freezing New York rain. A sleek, black Mercedes S-Class town car was idling at the curb, its hazard lights blinking through the downpour. My driver, Thomas, rushed out with a large black umbrella to open the door for me. "Terrible weather tonight, Mr. Henderson," Thomas said respectfully as I stepped into the warm, leather-scented interior. "It's just water, Thomas," I replied, settling into the plush seat. "To the Plaza Hotel, please." "Right away, sir." Through the tinted, rain-streaked window, I looked back at the diner one last time. I could see Samantha standing frozen by the booth. She was staring out at the street, clutching the $100 bill to her chest, her shoulders shaking violently as she wept into the empty fluorescent-lit room. The Mercedes pulled away, accelerating smoothly into the bright, endless stream of city traffic. I leaned my head back against the headrest, listening to the rain beat against the glass, and closed my eyes with a contented smile. The storm of my past was finally, permanently over. I had survived the flood, and this time, I wasn't just living. I had conquered the world. If you love this story of brutal karma, absolute revenge, and building an empire from the ashes, don't let the story end here. Hit that like button to feed the algorithm. Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that the best revenge is massive success. And make sure to subscribe with notifications on. We drop high-stakes first-person drama stories every single week, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment below. Would you have left the $100 tip as a final insult, or walked out with nothing? Let me know